Good evening, everyone. Really awesome to be hosting you this evening at Citadel. I hope you enjoyed the cold weather. It's really good that we're getting some rain, so that's really positive. If you don't know me by now, I'm Chad Bartlett. I'm one of the co-founders of the Grove Innovators Club, which is an amazing initiative started about 2 years ago by Grove, obviously sponsored by Grove. It's really exciting to be hosting you all here this evening. I can see a number of new faces in the audience, so that's really a good sign. And obviously some of the usual community that we enjoy seeing at all of our events. So really proud to be here and introducing Brian Pinnock, our guest innovator. So if you haven't been to the Grove Innovators Club before, what is this all about? It's really about cultivating a community of like-minded individuals who are passionate about innovation, technology, and social change. It's really about bringing like-minded individuals together to co-create and solve real-world problems in our businesses and just in our general sort of walk of life. So it's really great to have you all here. I know that you're all going to be able to contribute this evening to collaborate and to share ideas and to really socialize and network with everybody who's here this evening. So we like to keep it really short and sharp to the point, so that's why we don't have any presentations and all that. And we're going to try and sort of conclude this evening at about 5:45, so everyone can carry on having some drinks and really enjoying the networking. So the main value add this evening is really having Brian here this evening. He's a cyber resilience expert. So that's what everybody told me. So I'm going to introduce Brian in a couple of minutes, but I just want to give you a quick view of where Grove has sort of transitioned over the last couple of months. And you can see that we've rebranded, which I think is really exciting. So you can have a look at our website. Elri was responsible for that in the marketing team, so we're really proud of the new brand. So please give us feedback. We've also done a 360-degree turn to go back to our roots around our DNA, which is really about cloud and security in the cloud. And it's really, at the moment, a big focus of ours around cyber resilience and cloud security. And that's obviously why we're having a key topic of discussion tonight around that with Brian. Just to give you some insight on some of the projects that we've been involved with. Some of our team are actually in East London at the moment, just launching a crowdsourced mobile application to help the municipality and the community there to really to report any incidents that might be happening in that specific community. We're also launching a Strava type mobile application for it's not for individuals, it's for team sports in the UK through a VC project or sponsored project. So that's really exciting. And also we've just contracted an existing customer which is an emergency services customer here locally in the Western Cape with some of our analytics team, our big data analytics team in the UK. So we're really proud of some of the work that we're doing. We still believe that innovation happens at the fringes between cloud, mobile, cybersecurity, and big data analytics. So we've got multiple disciplinaries and experience in those spheres. So the main one tonight is around cybersecurity, and that's where Brian comes in at this point in time. So I don't know if any of you know Brian. So he's really well known, respected. He's a true innovator. He's a disruptor. He's done some amazing things, and we're really looking forward to your backstory here this evening, specifically around cybersecurity and GDPR compliance. We've been through a reimagining process ourselves through GDPR, and I think it's really a positive step in the right direction for security and data compliance. We've had to rethink a lot of our processes as an organization, in a global organization, so I think it's really positive. So at that point I'd like to hand over to you, Brian. So thank you very much. The floor is yours. And really appreciate you being here this evening, and also to Mimecast just for allowing some of his time this evening with us. So thank you very much.
Did anyone hear me? Yeah, it seems to be working quite well.
Yeah.
So when I was asked to do this presentation, I was quite relaxed about it. I do a lot of presentations all the time. It's part of my day job. And then Chad came to me, I think it was on Monday, and said, look, I'd like to have a brief chat just to kind of give you the brief. So I thought, not a problem. He'll tell me what to kind of just concentrate the content a little bit. He said, look, please, whatever you do, don't do a PowerPoint. So I thought, oh, there's one crutch gone. And then he said, please, just another thing, please, whatever you do, don't do any kind of a corporate presentation. I thought, oh, there's a whole other crutch gone. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do here. So please just indulge me. I do need at least one crutch in this whole thing. So I've made a few notes earlier this afternoon. My colleagues were asking me today, what are you going to talk about? And I said, I literally have no idea yet. So it's still forming in my head. Because I'm told it's just supposed to be a very relaxed presentation, just kind of talking about things. Now, the challenge that I had actually is I'm very uncomfortable talking about myself. In fact, when I started out doing this after my meeting with Chad earlier this week, I kind of started to feel a little bit like, I guess, the eighth husband of Elizabeth Taylor must have felt like on their wedding night. Because he knew exactly what to do, he just had absolutely no idea how to make it interesting. I guess nobody really finds themselves, and I thank you very much for that billing. A friend of mine actually had a look on LinkedIn. This the kind of advertisement for this evening was floating around on LinkedIn. He said, I saw something that looked really interesting on LinkedIn until I realized you were the speaker. So, thank you very much. But I think what I'm really going to be focusing on, I'm not that keen on doing a backstory per se. So what I'm going to do is actually, I saw a presentation not that long ago by the CEO of one of sort of fairly well-respected large cybersecurity company, and he spoke about how cybersecurity has actually gone through multiple generations. And I thought maybe I can use that as a kind of a framework for my talk tonight. And I'm going to start off by saying we've actually been in a war in IT and business for more than the last 30 years. And it's a war that up until now we've actually been winning. There have been a few casualties. You see them in the media, companies that have been breached, companies that have gone out of business or had massive losses due to some kind of data breach. But by and large, we've actually been successful. So what's been happening is threat actors have found a way to exploit some of the vulnerabilities in our organizations, and we've responded to them as an industry and as business, and we've kind of kept up. In fact, we've kept more than kept up. So we've had security that's kind of been good enough, in fact more than good enough. Good enough has actually been way more than good enough for the last few years. And unfortunately, in the last year and a half to 2 years or so, that's actually radically changed. And if you go and talk to anyone who is sort of very, very well integrated into any kind of security, you go and talk to people who are on the cybersecurity teams in banks, and you get them away from their kind of senior management and you have a beer with them, they'll tell you we're actually losing this fight. And this is starting to be a pattern that I'm starting to see more and more. And there's a good reason for that, is we're actually starting to fight today's battles with yesterday's type of technology. So really what I want to talk about today is how the threat landscape has actually changed over the years. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to kind of just sort of bring in a little bit of my own story as we go along. So my story started out, actually a Joburg boy originally. I went to King Edward's, came down to UCT, and I've never left Cape Town. I love Cape Town. Well, that's not technically true. I travel so much now. When people ask me where do you live, I say, well, I'm all over the place. I'm either in Kenya, or Dubai, or Joburg, or Durban, or somewhere, but my family lives in Cape Town. So that's the case right now. I started out at UCT, and while I was at UCT, it was kind of the birth of the security industry, because that was when the first viruses come out. And I know there's one or two people in the room who actually come from security companies, and I'm sure you're going to come up to you afterwards and say you got the kind of the date of that particular threat wrong or whatever. And what I'm really going to talk about is when those threats became kind of widely adopted, is not quite the right word, but sort of widely available in the wild, when they were started to get used excessively. So things like ransomware and viruses, things have actually been around for a very long time, but they haven't been widely adopted by threat actors until relatively recently, or some of them, certainly viruses have. So the virus was kind of the beginning of the security industry, and the first kind of response to that threat was antivirus. And it was a pretty easy challenge to solve. What you needed to do was figure out what the viruses were, get some kind of a fingerprint on them, or a hash if you want to get super technical about it, and essentially have what is an AV file that can actually tell you what the viruses are. And once you've got that, it's fine. And in fact, in the early days during the PC era, there weren't even a lot of networks. So everything kind of moved at walking pace. Viruses came on CDs and floppy and stiffy disks and things like that, and it was pretty easy to kind of keep up with them. The biggest challenge was actually updating your antivirus files. Quite interesting, when I left university, we just started to see the beginning of the internet in South Africa at that point. So the very first company I ever worked for was a company called ProLab. One of the first things I said to them is, where's your email? And the CEO of the company at the time said, but who would we talk to? which is quite interesting. This was in about 1992, and it was quite interesting because that roughly coincided with the kind of next generation of threats that started emerging. Because as the internet emerged, you started to see more companies moving into networking. One of the biggest things I did initially in my first job as a sort of technical person was install local area networks and wide area networks for companies in Cape Town, retailers like the Foschini Group, companies like Soldata Steel, numerous companies, Old Mutual, multiple companies. And what was interesting at the time was there was no real standard. There were multiple standards. Standards were great if you just pick any one you want. So at the networking level, you had Ethernet, you had Token Ring, you had FTDI. And what was interesting about that is the protocol on top of that wasn't necessarily TCP/IP. It was all kinds of things. Novell had IPX, Apple had AppleTalk, DEC had DECnet, and TCP/IP wasn't the de facto or given winner. It's very easy to look back and go, well, TCP/IP was obviously going to win. But at the time, that wasn't the case. So what you had was organizations that in the sort of first generation era and the second generation era were kind of just working on security by luck. So you had this concept of security by obscurity, first of all. Nobody knew where you were or who you were. Secondly, you had security by complexity. Every single organization had a combination of different technologies that made it really unlikely that an attacker would know them well enough to actually get in. You also had a situation where they had security by accessibility or lack of accessibility, inaccessibility. Nobody was that networked that you could actually get in very easily. You had to dial in and know what the phone numbers were, all of those kinds of things. And then, of course, you had security by design. And security by design in the second generation was primarily a firewall. And what we did at that point, I actually left the company that I started out in the industry with a bunch of guys, 5 guys actually, a company called Pinnock, sort of clues in the name there. And we started out doing, amongst other things, installing networks and putting in firewalls and doing security consulting for companies. And doing pretty well. In fact, we did well enough that we actually listed that company on the stock exchange early on. And this was kind of way sort of in the early days before startups were kind of the fun thing to do. It was way before venture capital was sort of sexy or fashionable. And we kind of had to do things the hard way, like sort of mortgaging our house and borrowing money from the bank. But we were quite successful. We managed to launch the company and do quite well out of that whole exercise. And in fact, sold that business to Bidvest. I'm actually not entirely sure. I haven't really kept track of where that went. But I then left at that point and joined a company called 3Com. And I think that's sort of a key learning at that point, just personally for me, was at that stage in your life, it's very, very critical to first of all find a really good mentor. That really, really helped me. Even though they're giving you the kind of information which right now you look at and think it's incredibly trite, it was super valuable to me. I remember my very first mentor was a guy called Mike Roderick, and some of the sort of famous sayings that he came up with, and people are going to laugh because it's really, really old, but it's much, much easier to ask for forgiveness than it is to ask for permission. And I've kind of lived by that mantra for many years in many organizations. Just get something done and afterwards kind of sweep up the mess. And that's quite critical, although that can actually come back and bite you, and I might sort of touch on that in a little bit of time. So, that was the kind of firewall era. Listed the company, left it, and that whole kind of security by accessibility disappeared. At this time, what's happening is the kind of threat actors that you had in the industry were kind of hobby hackers. They were super skilled people, and they started to get augmented by cyber criminals. They weren't particularly well organized, but they were starting to see there was a lot of money involved in actually getting to the organizations and breaching them either for monetary gain or for gaining information, which normally has a secondary effect of selling it for money in some way, either industrial espionage or just selling sort of databases of information. And I then joined the Dimension Data Group at that point. And it was actually a great time to join the Dimension Data Group, strange enough. I actually was going through a really, really difficult time. But what it did is allowed us to be really, really flexible in what we were doing. I joined a team of people where we actually focused on the voice space in organizations. And something else I learned is quite critical as you're going through life to look at different types of technologies. And there's only really money to be made in two areas. One is when kind of a technology is emerging, some sunrise technology, and one is where technology is declining, a sunset technology. And if you focus on those two areas, you can make a lot of money. And the reason for that is very simply a skills issue. And there's an old adage about where there's mystery, there's margin. And that kind of has kept up with me right throughout the industry. And that typically comes down to when people don't understand something, they're actually willing to pay someone to actually get it done for them. As soon as something becomes mundane and everybody understands it and everybody does it, well, then it just becomes something that becomes low margin and very, very difficult to kind of show, even though the complexity doesn't disappear. So you make less money as a service provider, as a consumer of that service. It's a great space to be in. The complexity is absolutely still there. what we did, as I mentioned that in the early days, we actually focused on voice and voice services and voice security, because interestingly enough, voice was actually lagging well behind networking. Networking had solved the problem of the sort of first generation and second generation, and we were having massive problems with organizations with voice fraud. And over time, something quite interesting happened as we started. There was the era of IP telephony. Now it's kind of old hat. Back then it was like a really hard sell, telling people that IP telephony is something you need to move to because of all of these business benefits, which, if I'm actually really honest about it now, probably weren't exactly there. I don't think there's a massive difference between what IP telephony delivers and what the old TDM technology delivers. And that was also a bit of a lesson. Sometimes people will buy things literally just because everybody else is buying them. But the biggest challenge that came into that space as well, or the most interesting thing for me, is PAVXs in the old days kind of had a lifespan. The oldest one I was aware of was a client of mine in Newlands Brewery, had an 18-year-old PAVX. It was just working, so they didn't get rid of it. And as soon as they changed to IP telephony, they suddenly got into that kind of IT replacement cycle, which is that kind of 3 to 5 year cycle that we're all kind of used to. And I'm going to come back to that 3 to 5 year cycle because it's quite critical with security. At this point in the kind of landscape, 3 to 5 years is more than adequate to keep up with the threat actors. So you buy something and you can actually keep it for about 5 years, and the technology is 5 years old, you know it's doing a good enough job. That's in the early 2000s, not the case today. So as we kind of went along, we found more and more kind of interesting things around sort of voice fraud and various other things. But primarily what we started to see is threat actors now realizing they couldn't get in via the virus side that easy, they couldn't get in via the firewall, so what they started to do was attack applications. And the security response to that was to bring in, a number of security responses that really was intrusion prevention, intrusion detection devices. And that was really because obviously everything was starting to become less complex and moving towards an era where everything was IP-based, web-based services, databases, all of those sorts of things, and threat actors were saying, great, this is an area to actually exploit vulnerabilities. And there were massive vulnerabilities. There was sort of every single area. So the networking guys had kind of figured out, geez, we really need to harden things up. The application guys were completely naive and basically launching products that had great business capabilities with no security. And of course they then needed to catch up. There's a sort of maturity cycle that every single kind of part of IT needs to go through. And business applications was nowhere close to that. We needed to put in prevention kind of capabilities. And really what started to happen there is you still had security by obscurity. You no longer had that inaccessibility because everything was networked, and you were starting to get that no security by complexity either. The complexity was diminishing. And what that means is you've now got a much broader attack surface. If I know how to attack an SQL database, I know how to attack every SQL database because they're all standardized. If I know how to attack an Ethernet-based network with TCP/IP running on it, I can attack all networks that have TCP/IP running on it because they're all the same. So the attackers started finding things getting easier and easier. My personal journey then took me to Internet Solutions. I followed a colleague of mine who's actually now happens to be heading up Mimecast in South Africa, Brandon Becker. He joined Internet Solutions from Didata, and I followed him across. And really what we focused on there was bringing IS into the voice world and all of the kind of learnings I'd had at Dimension Data. At that time, there was quite a lot of a move towards cloud-based security. It was probably a little bit early at IS. We're starting to see a lot more of it now. And even though something is available and technically possible, one of the challenges we've got with this adoption cycle is people don't necessarily take on something unless it's actually taken on by a whole number of people. It goes back to that point I made earlier about something might be technically correct, but unless people are seeing this happening in an industry more widespread, we tend to, it's a terrible thing, we have a herd mentality. And maybe correctly, because it actually serves us reasonably well. But sometimes there are services and technologies that are a little bit too early for their time, and they don't get adopted, not because there's anything wrong with them, but just because nobody else is adopting them, just don't quite cross that chasm that Moore speaks about. So what started happening around about this time in the sort of threat industry is threat actors started to get a lot more sophisticated. You started seeing criminal syndicates starting to emerge, to the point where they were actually building up kind of support structures like call centers and help desks and all of these kinds of things. Obviously fairly kind of unstructured in the sense of not being the way sort of a business would necessarily do it, but really getting kind of mobilized and doing things at a production kind of level, not individuals kind of in their homes doing these sorts of things. And we started to see the emergence of, it's a technical term, the sort of polymorphic type attacks. And really that's just a fancy word for saying stuff that changes a lot. And really, give you an example of that is I could send a Word document to a colleague over there. It looks just like a Word document or a PDF or an Excel spreadsheet. But what it contains is some kind of malicious code which has been designed to actually be different every single time so that an antivirus or firewall or something that's that's built to kind of detect those signature-based type attacks won't see it. And what we started to need to do is have a defense against those kinds of attacks. And those are things like sandboxes, things that actually can go for something and realize that it's actually a targeted attack. So up till now, everything has kind of been a spray and pray type approach. Spam is a good example of that. Don't really care who it gets to. We know that we've got a success rate of 0.1%. If I send out a couple of million, 0.1 doesn't matter because 0.1% is actually a high hit rate ultimately of a very. And we kind of closed those doors on attackers, and they realized they needed to get a lot more targeted, not only in kind of who they were going for, but how they actually set up these types of attacks against us. So, just want to see what I'm sort of going for here. Sorry, I lost my place a little bit. Okay, sorry, I was at ICE at this point, and to be honest, I'd actually kind of lost a little bit of touch with the sort of end customer. I'd moved into research and development side of ICE. We were doing some really cool things. Quite a few of them never actually made it out to the market. Things like looking at machine learning and Bayesian inference to kind of work out, even if something was encrypted on a particular internet line, we could actually see whether this was video, whether this was traffic of a particular kind. So basically it's working with a really, really smart team of really cool people. And a kind of personal learning I got from that, originally it's sort of the first company that I started myself, and then some of the companies subsequent to that, is the trick in life I've found is try and never to be the smartest person in the room for any length of time. Sometimes you, by default, are if there's just too many salespeople there, but most of the time you actually want to be with people who are smarter than you because they just make you look good. And the other trick with people who are smarter than you is to give them the credibility because it actually also helps to make you look like a magnanimous person. Ultimately, those kind of people make you successful. And possibly the most successful team I've ever worked with was that team at Internet Solutions. Some really, really top people. There's a guy called Jeff Fletcher. He's now left and he's working for an American big data company called Hadoop. So one of the best project managers I've ever worked with. One of the best sort of networking engineers. We did some very cool stuff. Took a receiver out of a TV. Did some things with what the guys with remote controlled airplanes were doing. And actually built a thing that was costing around about $100 for us to build, that was actually costing about 100,000 Rand to buy out in the market. Just trying out little tricks in R&D. Very, very cool. Biggest challenge with R&D is actually getting R&D into the market. And at ICE we were doing a lot of stuff. I was involved in both sides, kind of like the early stage R&D as well as the product development. And there's an old saying that success has many parents but failure is an orphan, and that's very, very true when it comes to research and development. So when you build something and it's successful, you almost never get the ultimate credit for it, even though you were kind of the original kind of person or group of people that created this thing. Whereas if something is a failure, that's kind of the line points straight to you and everybody steps out of the way so that they're not involved in the crossfire. And one of the biggest challenges of any organization when they're successful or too successful is remaining successful. And I don't want to sort of pour cold water on an organization that's still out there and I've now subsequently left, but it was one of the biggest challenges I saw at companies like Dimension Data, numerous other companies that we see out in the industry, and unfortunately a company like Internet Solutions. It was an amazing, amazing company when it started by running up Tirka, super innovative, very, very successful in the space that it was in, but maintaining that success is hugely challenging. And there's no real time to drill into that now. If anyone wants to have a beer and kind of talk about different kinds of innovation cycles and strategies and things like that. The one thing I have learned, and an ex-colleague of mine from very, very early days, is with Vodacom now, says that anyone who has innovation in their title generally doesn't keep their job for very long, which is quite interesting because he's the head of innovation at Vodacom. So that, in fact, ironically, was the last place first and last place I've ever worked where I had the word innovation in my title. It was a great ride, loved doing it, it was very, very technical. And sort of intellectually stimulating, but the challenge I had was I actually lost touch to some degree with sort of the end client. And I took stock of where we were at that point and got a phone call from Brandon Becker. It was quite fortuitous. There was quite a big restructure going on at IS. They wanted me to move to Johannesburg. I'm not a big Joburg person, even though I grew up there. And I thought maybe it's time to actually make a change. And he asked me to phone a guy called Peter Bauer and just sort of see a little bit about the company. And Mimecast is actually a great, untold South African story. Started by two South Africans in London. It's an amazing platform, amazing story. It's now listed on the Nasdaq Stock Exchange, doing extremely well. And probably if you look at it, so I don't want anybody to quote me on this, but I suspect by sort of headcount, we're the largest security company represented in South Africa. but well over 100 people. One of the problems of security, first of all, is a skills problem. And secondly, people kind of have these local presences of 5 or 10 people maybe, but not the kind of investment that a Mimecast has. So Mimecast is very invested in South Africa. And one of the reasons that I joined them, I looked to see what kind of company do I want to join. It's either going to have something to do with big data, security, or cloud. And Mimecast ticked kind of 2.5 of those boxes at the time. We're starting to move into the other space now. And I thought, well, let's give this a go. And 2 years later, I'm here, and I've learned a huge amount. It's the first time I've actually in my career immersed myself in the security side. Everything else has been kind of peripheral. I've touched on it. You know, yes, I've sold firewalls. I've done a little bit of security. I've pretended to be a security consultant when necessary. But the reality is I'm now in a space where, you know, this is we eat, sleep, live, breathe security. And this is where I started to realize that this war is actually a lot more sophisticated, a lot tougher, and actually a lot more below the radar than we realize. We frequently go into companies who say to us, you know, close the windows, close the blinds, make sure the NDA is signed, and go, you know, we've been hit by ransomware, but you're not allowed to tell anyone. And it's kind of the thing I like, sort of liken it to is the old sort of AIDS crisis we had in the 1980s and 1990s, where there was a stigma associated with AIDS. And so, of course, nobody ever wanted to declare their status. I think it's probably still somewhat like that to a degree, but it's gone away. And companies are very much like that, especially the security and IT people. People are ashamed of the fact that they've been breached, in spite of the fact that if you look at the statistics, they actually show that multiple companies get breached all the time. So something like 2 out of 3 organizations in the world get breached every single year. And we're seeing that constantly. Yes, the breaches might be minor in certain cases, but these breaches are happening all the time. And I kind of wanted to know, why is this the case? Why were we winning this war pretty well up until now? Now we're starting to see these statistics starting to climb. And I took the view that we've kind of lost the security by obscurity. Once Google was out there, interesting enough, I had a radio interview this morning. I say this, sorry, as a sort of throwaway line, like it happens all the time. It's very rare, so I was a little bit nervous. And it was about this Goliath and Goliath entertainment company that was recently breached, and it was Cape Talk, and they wanted to say, you know, sort of what's it all about. I thought, well, let me actually just go onto their site and see what I can glean from just publicly available information. Had a look at their MX records, went onto Google, found out who they were, went onto hunter.io, and in a very, very short space of time, I worked out about 6 ways that I could have attacked Goliath and Goliath. And I promise you, I'm certainly not a penetration tester. A penetration tester could probably have worked out about 60 ways of attacking them. So the challenge with those sorts of organizations, they're using cloud-based services. It happens to be AfriHost, but I'm not pointing fingers at AfriHost because exactly the same holds true for Google, for Office 365, is all of these companies are using kind of first and second generation technology. Maybe let's be kind to them and say 2.5G technology, if you want to sort of talk almost like mobile telephony type forms. So of course the antivirus has got a lot better. Endpoint protection is no longer just antivirus. But in sort of spirit, it is ultimately an architecture, is really a first generation technology. Firewalls have come a hell of a long way, but they're still essentially second generation technology. Most organizations, I mean, put up your hands if you've got antivirus on any of your endpoint protection, you know, any of your devices. Keep your hand up if you've got a firewall. I'm pretty sure everyone has. Keep your hand up if you've got any form of IPS or IDS. Okay. Keep your hand up if you've got any form of sandbox or any kind of fourth generation type technology. Some of the Mimecast people. But the point is, you see the hands starting to go down. And I think there's nothing wrong with this room. It's a pretty reasonable sample. We have IT people. This is the problem we've got, is we're fighting a war with old technology. And that's starting to be a problem. And really what you've lost is 365 is one of the biggest sort of productivity suites that is out there. Is that a single attack surface, like a monoculture. If you just find one way in, you've actually got everybody. Nothing wrong with Office 365 per se, but this is the reason that we have these challenges. And ultimately, the biggest challenge we got, that was really the sort of tipping point of all of this, with these attacks that we had last year. I'm sure many people heard about them in the media, sort of WannaCry and NotPetya attacks. And what's interesting about those attacks is those finally changed the landscape completely, because we've always had people who well motivated, sort of your typical hackers or your hacktivists type people. You've had people who are well placed or insiders, but they've never really had the tools, other than the ones they built themselves, to really do a huge amount of damage. And suddenly with those leaks from the NSA in America, we released a whole lot of tools which can do massive damage out there. And none of our tool sets in terms of defense are actually quite up to the level to get there. Yes, we've got some quite interesting things. I know there's 1 or 2 people here from Darktrace. They're probably sitting there going, please, we can do stuff. And of course you can, but ultimately, there's a lot that we're not doing yet in terms of keeping up. And people kind of go to me and say, well, you know, I don't hear about these sorts of things. Where's this happening? We hear about it overseas, etc. But where are we seeing ransomware? Where are we seeing all of these sorts of things? And I just wanted to give you some examples. A couple of years ago, about 18 months ago, Standard Bank was hit by a Japanese cyber criminal syndicate. They lost 300 million rand. Postbank lost 30 million rand not that long ago. KFC, about a year or so ago, had a disgruntled employee, obviously a very clever guy, I'd like to employ him, who decided that he was unhappy with what they were doing for some reason and made sure that all of their electronic transactions, probably 1 in 3 didn't go through. So a whole bunch of people were getting free chicken and they lost out on 30% of their revenue till they discovered the problem. Who else? South African police services managed to lose the entire witness protection database. Somebody tried to steal it and found it easily accessible and got it. Denel managed to lose the entire supply database, again, less than a year ago. Old Mutual actually had a breach. They actually handled it really well, by the way, just if anyone hears from Old Mutual, I'm not knocking them. Probably the best, they probably handle about as well as you should if you had to comply with the POPI Act or GDPR. If you think that hacktivists are not a problem, what does Buffalo City Municipality and the Eastern Cape Education Department got in common? For some obscure reason, they managed to upset an Islamic activist organization deface their website. Both of their websites, incidentally. And most recently, about November last year, October, November, we had the Deeds Office leak. And this is the most embarrassing thing, is those things were left in kind of totally unprotected form. So the Deeds Office leak and this recent pay fines scenario, we had massive leaks. The hackers didn't even have to try. They literally tripped over the data that was out there. And that is literally a problem that we've got. So I'm talking about organizations that are trying to defend themselves with first and second and third generation technology, trying to fight against 5th generation attackers. And here we have people coming in with 0 generation defense against literally, I mean, it's not even bringing a gun, knife to a gunfight. That's arriving naked to a gunfight. So I think that kind of is a good way to segue into the GDPR side of things. So we're talking about breaches here. And just very, very briefly, GDPR, I was sitting with one of the dads, my son plays rugby, he's a Rondebosch, somebody here earlier, so we were sitting, was talking about SACS, so there's sort of some competition there, but it wasn't a SACS Rondebosch game. I think that's the primary school level at least, that's coming up this week. And he said, what have you been busy with? Oh, we got a lot of GDPR stuff. Friday was like GDPR day. So yeah, that doesn't impact any of us, does it? Yeah, over here it doesn't. And he couldn't have been more wrong. If you're an organization that processes in any way personally identifiable information, that could be the MAC address of a cell phone, an IP address, a telephone number, physical address of someone from the European Union, you are subject to GDPR, some extraterritorial regulation. How they'll go after you is quite interesting, and that kind of case law hasn't necessarily happened. I'll give you a sort of really trivial example. At Mimecast, we have a lunch system in Johannesburg where you kind of type in, I want my toasted sandwich on Friday and I want sort of whatever it is, a salad on Thursday. And they'll ask for your email and your phone number. And I can guarantee there's somebody in Mimecast who has at least a dual passport. And that is effectively those people are now processing information, personally identifiable information from someone from the European Union. Now, chances of them being challenged on that is probably close to 0, but you obviously just got to extrapolate from that kind of far left of the continuum all the way through to if you're a big retailer and you've got some people's credit information, all of these sorts of things. You need to make yourself GDPR compliant. Good news with that is it mostly overlaps with POPI, or POPI as we now supposed to call it. It doesn't really roll off the tongue for some reason, so I really struggle. I'm going to call it POPI, and you can throw in the A in the back of your mind as we're going along. And a couple of things that are quite key to understand is, first of all, the terminology. The clues in the terminology, they talk about data subjects, data controllers, and data processors. Don't ever talk about a data owner, because the data owner is actually the person. It's a fundamental shift. It's a paradigm shift in how we deal with information. You actually now, if you're a European Union citizen, own that information, not the controller of that information. Somebody like Mimecast, for example, or Google or Microsoft would be a processor of that information. And as the controller of that information, if you're a company, and the processor of that information, if we're one of your suppliers, we've got to work really, really closely together. Because if there's a data breach, you've got 72 hours to actually notify the appropriate authority. And in the old days, if anyone's been involved in a data breach, you know exactly how it works. First of all, you want to keep it as quiet as possible. You want to find out exactly what the issue is. And if it's not caused any major issues that you can quickly sweep under the carpet, you don't tell anyone.
Just plug it up.
Exactly. So that kind of mindset, I'm being slightly sort of facetious about it. Obviously there are processes and people who've got good governance and compliance and processes. But one of the key things we generally used to take our time about it, make sure we knew exactly what was wrong. And sometimes took 3-4 months to actually come back with a report saying, this happened, this is what we did about it, this is how we closed it off and sorted everything out. Now you get 72 hours, that's a paradigm shift. So that's kind of massive. And the problem is if you get that wrong, you could theoretically be liable for a 20 million euro fine or 4% of your revenue. Again, chance of that happening in South Africa or being pursued is probably not high. I won't drill, again, over a beer. There's some sort of legal technicalities, and I'm not a lawyer, but I can give you a sense of how that might actually play itself out, depending on whose data, which country you're in, etc. But point being, you could be liable for those fines, probably less likely if you're not in the European Union. What will definitely happen is you get blacklisted and European countries won't be able to do business with you. So that could be a massive problem for you. And then the other problem we've got is this whole concept of subject access rights. So very, very briefly, that is the right of me as a citizen to come to you and go, what do you know about me? What have you got on me? Pretty easy to go to your database and go, right, let's just say I've got Neil Davey over there, so let's go look in the name field of this sort of corporate business database, and I can see I've got his address, I've got this, this, and this. That's your structured data, that's dead easy. What about the unstructured data? What about that employee of yours who took his credit card number and emailed it? Believe it or not, that actually happens more frequently than you know. It's one of the big things a lot of retailers use Mimecast for, is to find people who are bypassing PCI and sending credit card information, particularly in the sort of north of our borders. So first we'll get the right to get the data. How quickly could you find, so I came to you and said, what information do you have on me? Get it out of your database and out of all your unstructured data. Quite a hard question to answer because I don't think anybody really knows. Second one is the right, I could ask you sort of, I actually want that data back. I want you to actually import that data and give it to me in a format that I can take it to someone. So if I'm using your retail website, I want to take all that information, that shopping list that I use, and I want to import it to another retailer's website. Are you able to do that? It's a difficult question to answer, and some companies can, some companies can't. And the last one really is the right to be forgotten. How can you absolutely show with an audit trail to the satisfaction of a regulator that somebody's actually been forgotten? A lot of these rights right now are something you could probably go, don't have to worry too much about these things. I think the big focus is going to be on companies in Europe. But it's coming our way, and secondly, it's going to come our way with Poppy. So when Poppy comes around, all of these sorts of things are going to become requirements, and these are challenges. So when you think about email, sorry, I have to put in a little bit of a pitch for email, biggest business application that there is out there. It's the biggest source of unstructured data in any organization. Most companies, I think there's a piece of research I saw that said 98% of companies send files via email. The first thing that occurred to me is I wonder what the other 2% are doing. So this is a challenge you've got with your unstructured data in email, your unstructured data on your file shares, all of these sorts of things. So the structured data side is hard enough, the unstructured side of things is very difficult. So I started out by saying, when I was sitting here, I thought, geez, I've got a whole presentation in mind, and I've kind of rolled up. I've sort of had a rough idea of what the flow is, and hopefully it's been sort of okay. And I didn't really have a conclusion. I thought I've left you with sort of fairly depressing thoughts, saying we're in a war, we're winning the war, and now we're losing the war, and not really telling you what to do about it. And really, I think probably the best analogy I've got is in the 1970s, European countries were getting hit heavily by terrorism. And they started out with an anti-terrorism mindset, they're going to block every single terrorist attack. They very quickly got the view that this was actually not possible because they had to be right 100% of the time and the terrorists only had to get it right. And really security's got to that stage where you obviously put in the best possible security that you can afford. You put in the right generation of security to address the right generation of threats that are coming at you from all these threat actors that I've just mentioned. But at a point you've actually got to realize you're not going to be able to stop everything. So you've got to have a plan in place. What do you do when you do get breached? What's your communications plan? Do you pay the ransom? Don't you pay the ransom? That's a whole other debate for over a beer. All of those kind of questions, you have to have answered them up front. And the real trick is to find a way to actually carry on working, even though you've been breached or there's been some kind of malicious activity. So by and large, you want most of the organization to keep going as it was. And very, very last, what you want to do is get back to the last known good state. So it's about being resilient, this concept of cyber resilience as opposed to cyber security. Trying to stay up, trying to work, trying to keep going, and trying to get back to the last known good state, as opposed to just putting in the best possible defense and hoping for the best. And certainly, the old world of hoping that it'll never happen to me, security by obscurity, security by sort of inaccessibility and complexity, those have all disappeared. Things have got a lot harder. And it is going to be challenging, and you're going to see a lot more media, particularly around things like GDPR and around things like data breaches as we go forward. So thank you very much. I hope that was interesting. I hope I sort of brought a little bit of myself to it. I know I didn't talk too much about myself, but I only had 20 minutes and there's quite a lot to condense in. I'm very happy to take any questions if there are any.
Thanks, Brian. Any questions from the floor? I mean, this is your community, so I really want to hear from you. Anyone want to ask Brian a question?
Anyone except Tim, because Tim always asks me hard questions.
Do you want to
Maybe just a quick question about, there's a lot of activity in the security space in the commercial sector. We've got a sense of what's happening in the government sector. We've heard that the Hawks have got a cybercrime unit, and there may be various other units, NIA, that we haven't heard about. But do you have any insight on that sector and what's happening at a government level?
So I'll be perfectly blunt with you on the insight around what we're doing from a defensive side of things in terms of the policing side. I don't really know. There is some of the stuff going on. We're not very, very close to those specific authorities that are doing those sorts of things. What we do see is in the public sector, probably even more woefully inadequate protection than the private sector. Private sector tends to have, crown jewels to protect. So even though sometimes we don't do the best job of protecting them, at least we kind of make an effort and put in the necessary technology, spend the money. Public sector, we still see organizations getting breached. I can't name names, but there's some companies that we're well aware of in the public sector, parastaples that have had multiple breaches and are only now kind of looking at trying to address these sorts of things. And then back to that old problem of putting in first and second generation technology, because that's kind of what people understand. A lot of security now, the security skills is a massive deficit of security skills, particularly in the public sector. So you get someone who's kind of an IT generalist, they go firewall, antivirus, maybe talking intrusion prevention, and they're happy that's as much as they know. And that's really a challenge, is that education part as well.
Any other questions? No more questions?
Totally non-technical, because I understood the trade. I've been thinking, I want to pick up on your terrorism, anti-terrorism, and I found that part really interesting. I didn't only listen to the last part, I did listen to the and you've got some really good one-liners. I must try and unravel my writing to see whether I got them down right. But I think that South Africans are very good at crisis management. Very few South Africans are good at management of the crisis. And in the area of cyber security, cyber crime, cyber terrorism, etc., have you seen any good examples of the differentiation between crisis management and management of the crisis? When you heard about, or when you said about sweeping under the carpet, I think I knew where you were coming from, but my governance hackles did go up a little bit. But yeah, don't spread bad news that wasn't actually bad news outside of a very small group of people. But I'm really worried that we've got a couple of malaises as South Africans. One is we're great strategy, bad implementers. Two, we're good at crisis management, not good at management of the crisis. Same thing as risk management. Same type of thing. Any views on that, particularly from a cyber point of view?
So I'll start with the risk side of things, and then talk about the crisis management. Because the risk side, to me, is my personal bugbear. One of the problems we've got, I slightly alluded to it with the sort of the AIDS analogy, is we don't talk to each other enough. Financial services, incidentally, is actually very good at this. Their cyber teams actually have informal, what do you want to call it, groups of people. They literally have WhatsApp groups and various other things where they talk to each other. So when a threat comes into a bank or a financial institution, etc., they talk to each other. They're not competing with each other at that level, and they're constantly finding ways of, first of all, sending file hashes to each other, and secondly, what's referred to in cybersecurity as indicators of compromise, which is really just a list of things which is problematic about a particular file, saying, listen, we've had an incident, it was caused by this thing, and this thing had these kind of sort of characteristics, and we share that with everybody. And we don't see that outside of financial services. So that's sort of the risk level. The other problem is, with all the sweeping under the carpet and not sending, not having to declare data breaches and things yet, most CEOs and CFOs and boards and people kind of at operational level don't have a sense of what the real risk is. And because the risk has also suddenly rapidly accelerated in the last 18 months, 2 years. So we're still sort of thinking in 2010 terms, and we're actually in 2018, and the risk has radically changed. So that to me is a big one on the risk side. If you want an example, I can't think of some, probably the old mutual one is probably one of the best ones I've seen. And I'm not, I've got no dog in the game particularly. I don't even have a policy with Old Mutual anymore, so I'm not. They do happen to be a client of ours at a number of levels, but I'm not sort of patting them on the back particularly. But I think it was on their wealth management side. I'm not 100% sure which particular division was breached. And they immediately notified the people who were implicated. So they actually went about it, to my knowledge, in a very similar way that you would have had to do for GDPR or POPI. They declared what had happened, they declared what information had gone out, they believed, they said these are the people that are affected. They told people who weren't affected that there was a breach, but that information of theirs was safe. They went out to the media, they got ahead of the story. They did a whole lot of things really, really well from a PR, etc. As you say, from managing the crisis as opposed to crisis management. Companies that haven't done that well are, for example, South African Police Services. In fact, it's quite interesting. If you try and Google some of these things, you'll find them on sort of what I call under the fold of Google. So if you go and look for some of those things that I mentioned, they don't even come to the top 2 or 3 Google results. You've got to dig a little bit. Somebody mentioned them to me, and I was like, no, really? And first page, didn't see it. Second page, oh, hang on, there's something. Mobile operators, equally, people have a very negative attitude to these sorts of things. Somebody, I won't go into the details, but found that if they went into the web page of their particular mobile operator, I think it might have been MTN, and their account was Brian Pinnock 12345, they thought, well, let me just change it to John Smith 12346 and see what happens. They played around a little bit, just literally on the URL level, and found that they could actually access a whole lot of other people's accounts. Instead of thanking that person and saying, sure, we better beef up our cybersecurity, they actually try to sue that person for hacking into their systems. So there's not and I won't mention which companies, but the mobile operators are all pretty similar. I think we can all agree on that. So this is the challenge that you have, is the sort of mindset around these things is still very much a sweep it under the carpet mindset, which plays to the whole thing about how we then underrate the risk.
Just one question. Your thoughts around cybersecurity and affecting election results globally. Do you think there's any? Do you think that's going to be on the increase going forward?
There's I'm trying to think of his name now. He's one of the more famous sort of writers on cybersecurity and kind of opinion makers. And first of all, it's very, very problematic in organizations, sort of states in America that use electronic voting. One of the recent Black Hat conferences, they got a whole lot of voting machines that were encouraged use in America and put them on and said, like, right guys, let's see how we can hack these. And in about 24 hours, they managed to find 10 different ways to get into these machines. So that is a problem. A lot of these voting machines are using very, very old technology, kind of Windows XP based, all of these sorts of things, not patched to the latest level because not supported by Microsoft anymore, and all of these kind of things. So very, very possible to do that. Probably from a cyber security point of view, one of the biggest issues is actually getting into voters' rolls, changing the voters' role. So I'm not speaking from a position of knowledge at all, but I wouldn't imagine that it would be that hard for a determined hacker to get into the voters' rolls in South Africa if they knew what they were doing. In fact, one of the scariest moments for me, I was talking to a CISO from a financial services company, and he was relaying a story about a security conference. I think it was one of the IT Web conferences about 2 years ago, where a prominent South African hacker called Harun Mir, is actually a white hat hacker, one of the sort of founders of Sense Post, said, group of people, these are all security professionals now, from banks, from insurance companies, from big retailers, you're talking about enterprises. Said, anyone here want to put up their hand and say that I can't get to the C drive of your CFO's computer in about 48 hours? And he expected probably about half the room to go, give it a try, we got you covered. And not one single person put up their hand. So that says to me that if that's what your guys are spending on a lot of money, because banks are very serious about the security, I very much doubt the Independent Electoral Commission has the kind of security that, say, Standard Bank or ABSA does. So I don't really know, I'm not sure if I'm answering your question well, but a determined person could absolutely, certainly affect the results in certain areas. I think if they were clever about how they did it, if they just made a mass hack and, suddenly all of us found that we weren't on the voters' roll, it would be pretty easy to work out there'd been a problem. But if they found areas where they could shift the result just enough where things were quite marginal, I think you could actually do some damage. That's why, in fact, what they're calling for in the US is a paper-based system, moving back to a paper-based system. Ultimately, that's the only auditable thing that you have, is if there's somebody stamped it and you've actually put your mark on it, and you dispute the result, you can actually go back to the paper.
Any other questions?
It's spoken way too long.
Okay, thanks, Brian. Thank you very much. Also to say thank you very much. Thank you for our guest innovator, legendary guest innovator. You've got a legendary role now. So thank you very much. No, it's been really insightful. I hope everybody has enjoyed that and given you some good insights. I've got one question for you. Sorry, just one. I did notice on your Twitter bio that you have quite an interesting sort of not backstory, but just bio there with regards to the order of importance of different really important aspects of your life. And I want to understand how you sort of prioritize and who sort of helps you prioritize those things. So just to give you some insight. It was cybersecurity, history, wine, food, and there was I think engineering,
Children
and fatherhood, yeah. So just more like a personal sort of question. How do you sort of balance your time between your passions and work? And I know Mimecast are quite demanding on the time, so just some insight on that would be good.
I think there's two parts to that question. The first thing is you've got to be married to an amazing person, which I'm lucky to be married to someone who sort of really supports me. She's very entrepreneurial, which is why I sort of do much more of the kind of corporate enterprise type work, and you can only have one entrepreneur in the family at a time, so hopefully she gets her business off the ground and then I can start doing my thing at some point. But that's part of it, is having the right partner. But the second part is personally for me, is realizing there's no such thing as work-life balance as a static thing. It's very much dynamic. You've actually got to just go with the flow. And when work is actually just impinging on your personal life, you've actually just got to let it impinge. If you've got a brutal travel schedule like I do, you've got to. But then when you're kind of back in the moment, one of the tricks I did when I joined Mimecast, I said I need a lot more leave than the average person does if you're going to expect me to be doing all this travel. And that was quite a sort of hard negotiation. But there was logic behind it. Is when I'm off duty, I'm completely off duty. I'm with my kids. We're doing things. It's not this concept of what do you call it, quality time. I think it's a concept of just time. There's no such thing as quality time in my opinion. There is only time, and you've got to block it in and put in the time. So that's how I do it. Don't know if it works.
No, well, it seems to be working. You're extremely knowledgeable and insightful. So really appreciate it. Thank you, Brian. And I hope everyone's enjoyed the experience. Continue to enjoy the experience tonight. Get some more drinks. There's some food over there. We'll communicate with you when the next Innovators Club will be hosted. So enjoy the rest of the evening. And again, good to see everyone and appreciate your time. I know that you're all busy schedules, and to be here with us to share the experiences is valuable to us. And we hope that you've had a meaningful experience tonight. So thank you very much. And Brian, again, thank you for your time. Okay.